Hello and welcome back to my channel, Inside the Performer's Life. My name is Gelsey Laurie and I'm here to share with you all of the insights of my crazy life I've had as an entertainer. I've been professionally performing for over 20 years, from theme parks to cruise ships to Broadway shows to flying high with Cirque du Soleil. You name it, I've done it. Today I'm going to share with you a little bit of an insight of my experience working on cruise ships. So if you've ever been interested in doing it yourself, or you cruise all the time and wonder what it's like to live and work on the ship, well, this is the video for you. Before I get into this, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of my new content coming your way. Now let's get into my life on the seven seas. I worked for Celebrity Cruise Lines for 2 years. I did a total of about 2.5 contracts, but at the end of the day, it was about 2 years that I spent on the seas. It was a great experience. I was 19 when I first signed my contract, and by the end of the 2 years I was definitely ready to get the heck off that boat. I mean, it's amazing experience, it's an amazing life, but for me it kind of turned into a luxury prison, but we'll get into that. My first contract I signed was 9 months long. That is not including the 2 months I spent on land in rehearsals. That's very typical for most entertainers that are in the production shows. You'll go to wherever like the home base of the production shows for the cruise ship is. A lot of them are in Florida. I think a few are in California, and you end up sitting there for 1 to 2 months, depending on your contract, learning all of the material that you're then going to perform on the ships. Those are very long, grueling days. I mean, I want to say we were there at least by 8 a.m. and you'd be rolling home at 5 or 6 p.m. So it's kind of your typical 40-hour work week and then some, learning everything. So by the end of the day, it's not just that they're long hours, but your brain is fried trying to just take in all this choreography, remember it, and also rehearse it. Not to mention, mine was in Fort Lauderdale and we rehearsed in these warehouses that they didn't love air conditioning, so I maybe passed out once because it was August when we were there and we danced all day. And yeah, I love heat stroke. I'm a big player of that. So, ugh. But once you finish and you learn all of your shows, you then as a cast will fly to the ship, wherever it might be. I got extremely lucky my first contract, and my itinerary was in the Mediterranean. So our home port was Civitavecchia outside of Rome. So our cast flew to Rome, got on a little shuttle bus for 45 minutes, and headed to Civitavecchia to join the ship. Now, this was my first contract, and this was my first time ever seeing a celebrity cruise ship, so I was in awe. Like, it really is a beautiful line. As much as I got tired of the experience by the end, I will always support Celebrity Cruise Lines. They do a beautiful job and highly recommend. Now, for a lot of contract turnovers, what they'll do is overlap 1 to 2 cruises of a new cast coming on and the old cast that has been there. So while we went our first week, we would take all day in the theater, blocking the numbers, rehearsing, dress runs, etc. And then that night, the crew and cast that was already there performing the shows then does the shows. So we get that full cruise to kind of install our cast into it. But then the cast that was already there can perform the shows for everyone that's on that cruise ship, because everyone deserves a show. It's also kind of nice because then at night, after we've rehearsed for so long, we can sit back and watch the show that we're about to perform for 9 months and kind of get the little tips and tads from the cast before us. They would help us with, giving us tips on how to preset costumes and where to do things and etc. This week is also very strenuous for the new cast because not only are we in the theater literally all day installing these shows, but we also have to complete a handful of safety training because we're not just dancers on the ship, we are also sailors. So if the ship goes down, I had a lot of responsibilities that I had to do, which is insane. I was always like, I'm 19 and I have how many people's lives in my hand? And they were like, a lot. I also want to say that if the ship ever does go down, I do think entertainment will have a huge part of saving everybody because, yes, I was even the leader of my muster station. I had to give an announcement every cruise to all the new passengers to be like, hello, everybody, my name's Gelsey, and if the ship sinks, you're going to be here and I'm helping you. Wild. But there's a endless amount of safety training that you have to do, fire safety, evacuation safety, etc., etc. I can't even remember all of it. I just know one time I was so tired that I fell asleep in one of these trainings and the officer was not too happy about it. But what can I say? I was exhausted. So once all of our shows are installed, that includes the production shows. Personally, I did 3 different production shows. There was a pop show, a Broadway show, and a circus show. We also had something called theme nights. This is typical for a lot of ships as well, where they'll do performances around the boat. It's whether it's in the foyer or the nightclubs, by the pool deck, etc. It just depends on the company, cruise line you go on or work for, of what their model is. But we had about 3 to 4 theme nights, and those are about 20-minute performances we would do around the ship on top of the 3 major production shows. So more choreography in your head. So we also had to set those in those locations, all of the shows. Once we were good and ready to go, the old cast says goodbye. They fly home. They're ready to go. They've been on the ship for 9 months, and now it is our turn. Our accommodations were small. Not gonna lie, you work on a cruise ship is tiny. There are a lot of cruise lines that will actually double bunk you and have 2 people to a room. I know my sister danced for Princess Cruise Lines and Holland America, and she did have a roommate for both contracts. I was lucky enough to get my own room on this ship. My first room I got, even though it was my own, was a closet. When I say I could lay down on my back and touch all 4 walls with my arms and feet at the same time, like that's how small it was. There was a bed that folded down from the wall. When the bed was down, that was the size of the room, so there was nowhere to go. And then in the middle of my wall, I had a door. When you open that, that was a toilet shower. I called it a shoilet, and it literally was a toilet and a shower head. And on the other side, there was another door, and that led to a closet room on that side. So I shared my shoilet with another person on the other side. But at the end of the day, like I said, it was my own little closet space. I could go in there and shut the doors and be alone, which you really cherish on these kind of contracts, because on a cruise ship, you can't really get away from anybody. You work with the people that you play with, that you party with, that you sleep with, that you get the picture. So I was very grateful for that. My second contract, I got my own room and bathroom because I kind of had an upgraded position. I was doing aerial acrobatics and dancing, and yeah. So a lot of times like the singers will get their own rooms, because I will say the singers do get a better contract and deal than the dancers, but that's just how it is. It's always how it's been. But yeah, small, it's small. You get really used to it though. You get used to like living with not a lot. And I kind of like that part. So depending on the length of the cruise that you're doing, that kind of determines how many days off you get. So my first contract, we were doing 11 and 12-day cruises, and it was amazing, because if we only have 3 production shows and say 3 theme nights, that's only 6 nights that we're working. Well, we did welcome aboard as well. Okay, fine, 7 nights we're working, but that gives us all the other nights to take off and do whatever we want. So it's a very clutch job. You work hard, but you can play hard. And whenever you're in port, everyone always asks, oh, do you get to get off the ship, or do you have to stay on? I'm like, oh, no. There's no one to entertain on board, so we get to go off too. Thank God. So that really saved me a lot, especially in the Mediterranean, where it was my first time seeing any of these locations. We were on the coast of Italy, all the Greek islands, overnights in Istanbul, coast of Spain. I mean, hello. It was incredible. And I mean, my eyes couldn't have been any bigger every time I got off into a new port. I just absolutely miss my summers in the Mediterranean and love them. Now, I will say, fast forward, my last contract, we did 7-day cruises and did the same amount of work. So we would get maybe 1 night off a week, and that was a lot more rough. We also were in the Caribbean at that time, which, don't get me wrong, beautiful beaches, beautiful islands, but after a while it kind of gets old and the same, and I'd be like, where are we today? St. Martin? Ugh, I'm sick of that place. It's just another beach. Like, you do start to get that mentality, so that can get a little bit grueling. So it is very definitely cherishable and worth it to have a good itinerary and a long one where you get those extra days off. Now, outside of our production shows. Now, on production show days, we would have to do a tech run. So since it's probably been 10 days since we've done that show, we would do an entire run of the show in the afternoon in the theater with no one watching. Now, we didn't have to do it full out or wear costumes or anything, but it was so that all of the technical elements can be ran for safety. The microphones can be tested with singers, and then it's kind of just a little bit of like a refresh for the dancers. If our dance captain had any notes for us, that would be the time that we get them and we could implement them on the tech run, so that we have a clean, safe show that night. We would always do 2 shows every night we had a production show. The times differed. Sometimes they would do early shows, which would be like 7 and 9 p.m., always my preference. Or we would do I think 8:30 and 10:30 shows, which I don't like. I don't like being up late, which entertainment's a stupid career if you don't like to be up late because all shows are at night, but that's a different topic. The theme night days were a lot more lax because we didn't have to do a tech run. We didn't have to rehearse them. We literally would just show up 30 minutes before the show, get dressed, go up, do them. They also were normally a little less intense choreography wise, so I don't even think we warmed up for those. We just kind of went up and discoed or did a little groove, whatever the theme was. Now, like I said before, we did do a circus show. And a lot of us dancers were also cross trained to be aerialists. So, my first contract, the 4 female dancers did a 4 female quad trapeze act, and I was the aerial captain on that. So, it was my job to schedule trainings every cruise, multiple days per cruise, to keep us training, conditioned, running through whatever we needed. So, on top of all of the shows, the tech runs, we also did circus aerial conditioning training. We also had kind of open gym style where I would, on top of rehearsals for our specific act, have scheduled evening blocks where if there was nothing going on in the theater, I could request that we have that block and all of our specialty acts, circus performers, dancers could come and train on whatever apparatus or act they were working on or wanted to try, etc. I do owe a lot of my training in the early years to those nights and hours that I put in on the ships to then eventually get me to where I wanted to be with Cirque du Soleil. So again, very grateful for that opportunity to have that space and time to train. Now, I did say earlier that we are not just dancers, we are also sailors. So on top of all of the rigmarole I just described, we also had to do safety drills. Now, if you've ever been on a cruise ship, you might remember when you get on within the first couple hours, you have to do something called a muster drill. Muster drill is where everyone gets their life jackets on, goes to their designated spot that they are assigned if there is an emergency on board or if there is an evacuation needed, and you kind of just practice it. It's the same as being on an airplane when they do the buckle your seatbelt, blow up your life device, here's your exits, but a little bit of a grander scheme because it is a cruise ship. Now as I said, I was in charge of a lot of people's lives. I had a section I was designated and assigned to. So on every all aboard day, we had to participate in the guest muster drill. And whatever your position in that drill was, you kind of practice it during that time. My first contract, I was a leader, so I always had to organize everybody, get them in lines, and then at the end, I would have to get up and give an announcement of who I am and what we would do in case of an actual emergency. Now, these drills were not my favorite because everyone's coming on board, they're excited, it's a cruise ship, it's a vacation, and most of them have a glass of champagne or a cocktail in their hand. A few of them are tipsy, they're loud, they don't really want to listen to you or stand in line and have to do a drill when they just got on vacation. And I don't blame them, but if they didn't listen to me and safety captain walked by, well, I'd be the one in troubles. It was a bit of a bitch, if you will ask me, and it was always a drag. I mean, we always hated the drills. It was just like, come on, I don't want to do this. Especially on the 7-day cruises where you're just like, oh my gosh, didn't we just do this? So it's just one of those things. Now, also halfway through the cruise, they will schedule a crew drill. And the crew drill is basically the same thing. You go to your designated spots and you just stand there until they decide that the crew drill's over. And it's just kind of a practice drill. A lot of times they will simulate a fake fire somewhere, or kind of say someone's overboard, whatever, and then the team that is assigned to that emergency, which normally there's a very specific fire team, we were never on it, they would have to get their full fire suits on and pretend to go there and, just kind of practice different drills. Well, while they were doing that, we were all not allowed to leave our station. So we had to stand around in our life jackets while we're in this beautiful port, either Mykonos or Santorini, and it was always so annoying because you just want to go out and go to the beach or have a nice lunch out in port and you're like, ugh, it's crew drill. They also seemed on my contracts to always schedule crew drill the day after they threw a crew party. So I'm like not joking. They would have like martini nights for crew, or they would close off the upper nightclub and do like this whole crew party. And of course, the entire crew was getting schmammered. And then the next morning at like 7 a.m., they're like, get up and be at drill. And so Every time you would walk to drill, I swear everyone was hungover, miserable. It's a thing. I hated crew drill, and sometimes they would last so long. One time at a crew drill, they did actually take my section and volunteered us to board a lifeboat just for practice. And let me tell you how horrible those lifeboats are. Like, so claustrophobic. I think my forehead was against the wall, and I looked down at my feet dangling. There's another head because they like double stack them. And all I could think of was, oh my gosh, if this actually happens and we were stuck out on sea and the sea's really bad, someone's getting seasick, and everyone would probably get seasick and throw up from everyone else throwing up. And so just kill me now. Like, no, thank you. But yeah, I have been on one of those boats and they suck. Speaking of those rough waves, another fun challenge performing on cruise ships is the sea conditions. It does not matter what the sea is like. You could have perfectly still seas, or you could have a pretty rough, rocky night. The show must go on. So I was dancing on a steel stage in 3-inch heels, jumping and landing while the boat was also rocking. And it was one of the hardest challenges, I will say, working on a cruise ship. It also made my body hurt so much the next day, because if you're jumping up and doing a leap, and at that same exact time the ship goes down, and then as you land the ship goes up and you hit it, I mean, you could just hear all of us like, oh, grunt. My body hurt so bad dancing on cruise ships, probably way worse than anything else in my career, I will say. I would literally wake up and feel like a truck hit me. It was that bad. Now, this is something also that differs cruise line to cruise line, what their rules are, but most cruise lines do allow the dancers and singers to have guest privileges. So we don't have full guest access, but we do get to go upstairs to the bars and the restaurants and kind of schmooze with the crowd, if you will. Now, it can be annoying because if the buffet is crowded, they can turn us away. And that was always frustrating because as much food as there always is on cruise ships, and if you've ever, again, been a guest on a cruise ship, you know that you're normally rolling off the ship so full. I mean, it's just too much food. It's quite the reverse for the crew. There's very specific crew mess times, and if you miss them because you're working or you sleep late because we worked late, there's no food to be found. And if we go upstairs and get turned away because the buffet's too crowded with guests, then we're starving. And that happened to me quite a bit. If you didn't plan your meals, you would kind of go foodless for some hours, and that was always the worst part. So I did hate when I would go upstairs and get turned away. It was just kind of like, come on, I'm starving. But that was just part of it. We always also had to wear name tags and I didn't have to wear a uniform upstairs, but we did have a dress code we had to follow. So, it was nothing too slutty or nothing too casual. I ended up wearing a pencil skirt and heels a lot. It was just a safe bet. And again, name tag. That did come with frustrations though, because people would see you walking, looking smart with a name tag and go, I have a question for them, and not realize you're a dancer. And they would ask something about, I don't know, the docking time for the next day and what they need to do logistically, and you're like, I have no idea even where we're gonna be tomorrow, let alone the docking time. Don't ask me. And as a guest, they get quite frustrated because someone with a name tag doesn't have an answer. And I got to a point that I did not care. I was like, sir, I kickball change for your entertainment. I don't know anything else outside of that. But yeah. Or sometimes I would have a tray full of my dinner, finally get to go to the buffet, get my dinner, and right when you're walking to a table, that's when guests go, you're one of the dancers. Let me ask you 20 questions and interview you for the next hour, and then you can't actually sit down and ever eat dinner. And that happened actually quite a bit too. But I mean, let's be real. I did love the attention. We were like little mini celebrities on board, and it was fun. You just felt really appreciated and seen as an entertainer, so that I really did love. A question I get asked a lot is about fraternizing with guests. Everyone goes, oh, that must have happened all the time. Actually, big no. I don't know what it's like on different cruise lines, but I know for a fact Celebrity Cruise Lines, which is also sister partners with Royal Caribbean, so we had the same rules. There was a zero tolerance fraternization rule. So we could not go into guests' cabins. We could not touch, flirt, kiss, anything, you name it. No, 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 no. If you were seen hanging out with the same guest a lot in one cruise, you started seeing security walk around a lot more. They were definitely keeping an eye on you if they felt like you were spending too much time with a guest. Even when I had my own family come on, I had to let them know, hey, my parents are going to be on board. I'm going to be with them a lot. And then I did get special permission to go into their cabin, but you have to have it handwritten, approved, and their eyes are on you. Trust me, it is wild. Then the next question, speaking of fraternizing, is, wow, did all the crew sleep with each other? Yeah, they really did. It's crazy down there. Like the amount of relationships and ancestral. I mean, look, people are away from their friends, family. They're stuck on this ship for 9 months plus. You start getting something I like to call ship goggles. I don't know if you've ever heard of beer goggles in those college days of yours, where you have a couple beers and all of a sudden people that you wouldn't find attractive normally start looking real tasty. Well, you spend long enough on a ship and it happens the same way, I swear to God. But I mean, hey, we're all there. We're there together. We're having fun. So, of course, relationships do happen. And sometimes very serious relationships do happen. And then a lot of just one night stand flingy dramas do happen as well. Quite entertaining unless you're caught up in it. And then it sucks because there's nowhere to run or hide. If you get into a weird relationship, literally the next cruise, if it falls apart, you still have to see that person. And if you are with someone that you're working with in the same department, then you have to see them every day and work with them. So, yeah, tread wisely would be my advice. Pay is another thing I get asked a lot about on cruise ships. Now, I will say it is a pretty decent job. Now, I'm sure that the pay rate may have changed by now, but I know 13 years ago, I'm very transparent. I think I signed on for getting $650 a week. Now, there's kind of a pro and con of that. You think, it's kind of shitty. I mean, we're dancing a lot. We've trained our entire lives to be at this advanced professional level. And yeah, it's kind of like, I mean, to give you an idea, starting pay on Broadway is about $1,600, I believe, for chorus dancers. So, whoa. But I will say your food is included, your room is included. You don't really have a cell phone because you don't need it. You do have to pay for your own internet, but it's normally pretty cheap for crew. So the only costs are what you spend off in shore. So sometimes I would have high spending cruises and sometimes I'd be like, okay, I need to save. So it kind of evened out and it was a great way for me to save money, especially at 19 years old. Then I did get some raises. I did 2 more contracts after my first one. One was only 6 weeks and then they pulled me to do an inaugural contract, which meant we opened the ship. We were the first cast, brand new ship, great experience. I'll do a whole video just on that. But, you know, it's if you save wisely, you can leave with a cute savings chunk of change. And that's actually how I was able to leave cruise ships and then take about 6 months of auditioning and training and housing myself without having to get a survival job like waiting tables or teaching, etc. So you can kind of save up and invest that money back in you and keep your career going. That's always what I recommend, but you know, we all do it differently. Now, if you ask me today, would I go on a cruise ship and work for that much money? Hells no. But I also say you couldn't pay me $1 million to do another contract because, like I said, amazing experience. I cherish it all. But when I was done, and I don't think I could ever work on a ship again. I honestly, personally, am not a big cruiser. I don't love being a guest on them, so I don't even think I would want to go as a guest on one anymore, but I do understand the appeal to them and keep cruising if you love it. Well, that's just kind of the shallow blanket overview to what life working on a cruise ship looks like. Like I said, I'm gonna get into more detail, more videos diving into each section, each experience. But if you have any specific questions on what it's like to work on a cruise ship, please drop them down in the comments below. If you've worked for a cruise ship, comment your craziest story below. Or if you are a guest, what is your favorite cruise line? What's something you've always wondered about? Let me know. And I have more cruise ship talk and just more stories of my crazy life coming to you. So again, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and drop me a comment below. Thanks for tuning in. See you later.